Hey friends, my name is Allison Steele, and you're listening to Unravel with Allison. Unravel with Allison is a show where I take a concept that's got me in knots and we unravel it together. Thanks for being here. Hey friends, welcome to another episode of Unravel with Allison. Today, we're going on a trip. We're going to start with light language. Have you heard of it? Light language transmissions are something that I was first exposed to on the podcast Activations with JJ. JJ is a multidimensional channeler, 5D grid worker, energy sound healer, activation guide, and starseed linguist. And I had no idea what those words meant. But I was, let's call it, spiritually guided to her podcast. There was a point in my awakening where I kept feeling like there was a puzzle I'm supposed to solve about myself. Like there's a piece of me that's missing that the universe is trying to fill me in so I can remember something about who I am and who I'm supposed to be. When you get caught up in that narrative of like we're all here for a purpose and there's a plan and all that kind of stuff, and it's like everyone feels like they're supposed to have a purpose, or that like the karmic contract before we came into these bodies, we had a plan that we are fulfilling here. So that's part of it. And also just that excitement of awakening where you're like, oh, I keep seeing this. What does this mean? Or I keep seeing that. What does it mean? I feel like I'm getting closer to the answer. And then at some point I realized I never asked a question. What do I think I'm searching for? What's missing from me that I don't get on my own in pure existence alone? What is anybody else out there going to tell me that I can't tell myself? But before I got to that mentality, I started with JJ. And like when you first listen, there's a prompt that she goes through like, hey, this is an activation. Sit with it, experience it, let it reveal itself to you in time. It's going to initiate something for you that you will come to understand, like planting a seed that is going to bloom in understanding. And the first time I listened to this, it felt so silly, but I kept listening as they were released. And it felt silly because it sounded like baby babble, like complete nonsense that just flows out of this channeler. And it is silly to listen to, but I wasn't embarrassed about it. Like I knew it was silly, but I was also kind of here for it. And I also didn't dismiss it because I was curious. I stayed with it to evaluate what, if anything, I was experiencing with that modality, with this channeler. And why do we do this? Why do we listen to this? What is appealing and why does it matter? Why do we trust people to deposit this knowledge when we don't know what's on the other end? Because it's seemingly beneficial if you're open to the transmission. Is that not learning? In the same way that you agree to watch a movie without knowing the plot or the actors, but sitting down and allowing yourself to experience it. The meaning we attach to our understanding of it, that's where the magic is. Your evaluation of your perspective, like you're the critic, but almost subconsciously. This isn't something that I sat down to meditate about after listening, but I noticed after listening that I felt lighter, felt more myself, my thoughts lighter, flightier, but more curious. It was like I don't know, I was just dancing in my head. Everything felt a little more goofy. But if this is an activation or a coding or a download, the part where we learn and understand is a result of the energy provided. This is programming your subconscious. It's like your primary operating system uses the information and the imagery available to express this energy in a way that you're able to comprehend it, using your unique existence, your life experience to color in the situation. So imagine we're sitting in a room with 15 people, okay? And we each have a box of our personal photographs. You're instructed to look down in your box and pull out a picture that makes you feel happy. I would probably choose a picture that makes me happy when I see it, or that reminds me of that day, which was full of happiness. So it could be a flower, but I could remember exactly what park it's from and how perfect that day was. It could be my kids kicking a ball around. Or with like spaghetti all over their head. Almost every kid has that picture because the parents felt happy when it happened. Even though it was like a total mess, whatever, there's a balance where that's also adorable. On the other hand, if you all just had your pictures and I said, we are going to make a collage of happiness. Everybody please contribute a photo. Under that instruction, I'd probably like pick something where everybody's smiling. I would not pick the same picture. And even if those weren't asked back to back or whatever, those different prompts elicit different responses, even though they seem the same. But where you pick a picture because somebody's smiling, it's on mission. If there's no mission for your transmission, then you just have to consider the feeling. You begin to manifest the language as personal, better thoughts. But for me, it's not that I understand what the translation was in a word for word exchange, but I feel the difference. My thoughts were different. But it's interesting to note that there is no language or no outcome attached to this. Like when she releases these episodes, she'll give it a title, sprinkle some seasoning on it, like angel transmissions, priestess, dragon, dolphin codes, but the expression has no words, just free flowing out of her. Imagine you're sitting there with your eyes closed and somebody puts a Tootsie Pop in your mouth. With your eyes closed, you'd be like, oh, based on the mouth feel of it, you'd be able to feel that it feels like candy, like a sucker. But then the other information starts to come in like, oh, I remember the shape. This is a Tootsie Pop. Oh, I remember this is orange. It all starts to come back in when you stop to feel it, when you stop to consider it. How long until you're able to identify the flavor of that sucker? I imagine these transmissions to be like a Tootsie Pop for the brain, to expose this energy across the entire brain. Because I imagine it's like literally just exposing it to my brain, and my brain scans for similar energy to attach to it. But since it is so unknowable, since it's not words that are comprehensible, since it's not a one-for-one exchange, a translation, it illuminates your mind, the cobwebs. It shines a light on all the parts of yourself in your brain. And it's like a flash bomb that goes off. And then the stuff that it was like, oh, that one's like me. That's the stuff that comes back to you as your download by understanding the expression. That's your transmission of the light language, is that energy when it enters your system and then it illuminates what you have available and reports back its findings. But the cool part is that when it scans and it does all of that, it touches those parts of you that go untouched. And it offers curiosity because, again, it's scanning for something that feels like me, that looks like me, that is sensible like me. So highlighting your entirety, all of your brain with that feeling of like me, it's like I had a stronger sense of self by listening to nonsense. And I didn't understand what was going on, but I was discussing it with myself instead of just moving on. I felt compelled to continue listening, to listen all the way through, even though I didn't get it. But we do that with music too. When you're hearing a song for the first time, you may be like, I don't dig this, but I'm also not going to change it just yet. So with music, when I'm like goofing off, playing around or looking for something, I vocal stim constantly. I'm all that kind of stuff. As I look around, I'm constantly making noises. As an adult and as a kid, I've really tried to shut down that part of myself because it was a nuisance. But I was always making up songs and dances and sound effects for everything that was happening around me. Like if we're singing happy birthday, I was the kid screaming cha-cha-cha. But like I said, it annoys people. I've cut that energy off strong. Like 3 years ago, I had a New Year's resolution to stop being so annoying because I was working with somebody training a new manager who was more annoying than I was. But he was annoying in the same way that I was, in that it's primarily only entertaining to them. So this is like when somebody is writing something down and you elbow them so they mess up, because that's funny. It's funny to do that to people. It's funny when accidents happen, and it's silly and it's goofy and it's just like a quick little bump, and as long as the paper's not important, no harm, no foul. That's how it felt on my end as I'm bumping people's elbows. Like dad puns and stuff like that. Like people aren't interested in my style of comedy in the real world exchange. And it felt odd to me. And I also grew up in the environment where like being mean is being funny. So they didn't necessarily feel true to me always, but I learned to express it in like my teenage years. middle school especially. But what I really noticed is that like, I don't know what was different than what I was doing with what other people were doing. But it was like when I did it, it was wrong somehow, or it was meaner. And I just didn't understand. But we kind of have cut ourselves off from sharing our energy like this. It annoys people, and my kids too. Like when my son mentions Blippi, I am going to sing the theme song. So much to learn about. And then I pretend to hand the mic over to him, and he says, go away or stop. So as a kid, it wasn't uncommon to be asked if I was talking just to hear my voice. And I had no reason to back up my behavior. I couldn't verbalize it. That's just how I existed in a flow state. Making up songs, making up dances, making puns, pairing is how I consider it. I matched my existence with my surroundings. So if a song was on, I participated with it. If something was happening, I was a part of it. I was a part of all of it. I was just existing in a flow state. But they were right. But also it made me feel bad about doing it. Like my primary state of existence was a disturbance to everybody around me. And it was, but only sometimes. And I shoved it all down though. And so that New Year's resolution, after working with that person, I was like, okay, I'm ready to cut this off. I'm ready to not have this relationship with myself and others where I make anybody feel like I feel when he is working me, when he is using me for entertainment. I'm done with that. So I imagined getting like one of those clicker counters. I looked for one on Amazon. I couldn't find specifically what I wanted, so I didn't get anything, but I didn't need to. I imagined the process too. So what I would do, every time I had the urge, I went, and I gave myself a click as if I had the counter. And I didn't keep tallies or anything like that, but I did a little bit mentally like, holy crap, I've done that so much today. It's like I really had to not do it. But I reduced my disturbances. And I was a little depressed at that time. I don't know if I came out of that one. It was a very postpartum-y time for me as well. It was not easy, but I took away one of my favorite things, and it took me a while to be okay with getting it back. And what's made me okay with that, I still don't do that behavior so much, but I don't feel bad working a crowd anymore. I don't feel bad participating with my surroundings or making jokes. I had a hard time finding the line. What I thought was annoying across the board was maybe situational, and by being aware of my surroundings and by participating and connecting with the people around me, maybe those urges wouldn't exist. They don't. And when those compulsions arise now, I've cultivated it into where it arises in a welcome environment. So there are times where I get to be like this on purpose and it's okay, where I get to work a crowd on purpose and it's okay. And we still get that shock and awe part of it. That's the part that gets me excited, is when something happens that we don't see coming. When we're so into the mundane that like I'm begging for anybody to mix it up. I asked a group of classmates recently if they have felt bored recently, and they said yes. And I was fascinated by that because I was like, I cannot remember the last time that I have felt pure boredom. I'm sure it existed, but there's always something to do. There's no time to be bored. So I took out the fun that I let myself have in my day-to-day, but I didn't save any time for me to have fun by myself either. So it was across the board unfortunate that I stopped that behavior because it was magical. Talking with my hands. That's something I was told I did when I was younger. The sound effects. Unable to sit still. Anything that looks like ADHD or neurodivergency or autism, any of that expression in me is transmutation. It's expressing the stifled energy. And if you allow it to happen, if you make space for it to exist and continue to sing, it does express itself better within your boundaries. You just have to explore them, feel into it, make a connection with your surroundings. You'll see that those urges go away. And then when they do appear, they are done in safe ways. Because just because one person told you that that behavior was unacceptable or uncomfortable or whatever, it's the same thing as like if another person loves that behavior, it doesn't make it okay to do to everybody. Just because one person hates it doesn't mean it's okay to cut yourself off from it. But that's the difference, is the connection with your surroundings. Because I was also always told as a child that I wanted and was seeking attention, when all I ever wanted was connection. And had I had it, I don't think that those behaviors would have expressed in that way. But that's the other part about being a kid, where I have no reason to back up my behavior. I can't give you an answer to why I did what I did. I barely have the language to verbalize this now. But an 8-year-old can't explain transmutation, and that behavior is not considered. So, if somebody's sharing their transmission, their download, it is going to alter your program. And energetically, that sounds yucky, like you could get a virus. But if you just consider like whether or not you like the thoughts that choose to arise, you can still opt into your preference. It's like in the show Parks and Rec, where Anne says to Leslie, "You made me watch all 8 Harry Potter movies. I don't even like Harry Potter." And Leslie's like, "That's insane. You love Harry Potter. You've seen all 8 movies." But just because you watched something or spent time with something for so long doesn't mean you liked it. It doesn't matter how it seems or what anyone else thinks. You can choose to neutralize that experience and never consider it again. Give it a mental thumbs down, say no thank you, move on, unsubscribe. Same with your ideas, same with your programming. And if it feels better, consider it an upgrade. I also thought for a while that light language was kind of like speaking in tongues, because when I had first been exposed to that, I was not comfortable. I was concerned because their bodies looked real loose, but their language was like firm, affirmative, but nonsensical. And light language feels that way too. A little lighter, but that's silly. I hope that makes sense though, because literally that's the difference. It's still affirmative and like intentional. But I always felt like speaking in tongues seemed angry and deep. And light language is light. But light language is like that too. Like a release of a pent up something that you've given permission to express however it wants to. And then when I was younger, that uncomfortableness that I felt around that was all from fear. And I wasn't scared or felt like I was in a dark or bad place, but I did think it was weird. I thought speaking in tongues was weird. And I thought it was weird that everybody acted like it was normal. I felt alienated. So I just sat back and watched it all happen around me like, all right, I'm not here for this. But I didn't have the capacity to do anything about it. But with light language, I was about 20 years older and I still had that initial definition of that's weird. But I also allowed myself to be comfortable, to sit with it and to experience it. I didn't sit by and turn my head and want to look away from it, because that younger self, if I had the option to leave without being rude, I would have. Now at 30 years old, I took in this information, I took in this experience, and I felt better. So I appreciated it. 6 months of taking this in regularly. It was a preferred form of entertainment. I chose to entertain myself with this. And it helped decode my programming to validate humanity and the endless possibilities of existence with curiosity as its base tone. Curiosity colored all of those ideas. And I felt better with this coding, felt better with these upgrades. And that's my mission. I want to feel better, whether that means getting in a more cheerful mood, getting out of a bad mood, or sensing my muscles. I want to understand what I'm feeling, my sensory input, and my definition of their existence. I want to feel everything. I want to feel better. And when you felt a lot so much at a young age, part of the healing process is getting to the root of the issue. I had an understanding of what that meant. Like, I would overthink a situation to no end, consider everybody's viewpoints, and come to a unique conclusion based on the experience. So for example, lying. When reviewing my memories of being lied to and how terrible it felt, the questions I asked myself were like, why don't they trust me? Why would they keep this from me? Why don't they feel like I deserve to know the truth? I can feel that something isn't right. Why would they deny me access to my reality? I don't deserve this. But then I go through this process and realize how the liars are scared. They're terrified, lacking stability and self-esteem. Nobody's doing anything to me. They're doing everything to save themselves, and nobody was attacking anybody. So even though it feels bad and it feels like an attack, there's a whole story that could be written with that. There's a whole reality that could seem completely real. But I don't think people are evil. I think people are struggling. And sometimes this is the best we have to offer. But getting to the root of the hurt that I felt surrounding lying, when I would turn it on myself as if I'm not the safe person here, or I'm being lied to because I'm untrustworthy. All those things that I made assumptions about on the front end, those are not unique conclusions based on experience. Those are tropes. That's archetypal nonsense. And even though there's so much truth in the expression of archetypes, getting to the root of lying helped me see that type of energy structure in a lot of different situations where I thought I was the problem, or that I was the one being attacked, or that I was the one not worthy enough. Whatever the situation was where I wasn't comfortable with myself, getting to the root of that lying, being lied to issue, pulled that out of the ground. If you can change it at that level, it will ripple out. However, if you upgrade your programming, these won't appear in the same way. When you establish your primary lens with curiosity, these answers comfortably reveal themselves in the same way without having to revisit the pain of your past. Instead, you start to realize it in real time. Then your memories appear and you'll be able to view it in this new light. You don't have to sit with your trauma. You can refocus how you think, and the past begins to change itself. The stuff you were so bothered by, you suddenly understand. When you're curious and questioning, you will receive answers. Stop assuming and walking away. Stop saying that's weird and turning around. Master your questioning. When you ask better questions, you get better answers. And if that seems like a tall ask, which I get it, you could also use your imagination. You can choose the energy and deposit it to your situation. Just like the brain does with light language, you choose your own light language and add it to your situation. One of my favorite stories that the second I heard it, I believed it entirely because there was so much faith packed into the words. When she explains her relationship, like with her mother for years, she yearned for that mother-daughter relationship that she so specifically wanted. And she conjured it up in her heart as a grown adult woman whose heart hurt from the hustle and bustle of the everyday life that her childhood offered, did not allow a more intimate relationship with her mom where they got to talk about their lives and discuss their day and share advice and laugh together. So she made it herself. She pretended that that happened. She imagined sitting with her mom at the dining room table, getting out the tea set, and sharing these moments. How was your day today? What did you have for lunch? You know, if you're having trouble with a friend at school, that kind of stuff. That's what she deposited in her imagination and spent time with those emotions and that energy and did this often. Then one day her mom just says, "Do you remember the tea parties we used to have when you would come home from school? Those are some of my favorite times." If I heard that story 5 years ago, I would have assumed that this woman had tea parties with her mom and just forgot about it. But then she wished that she could feel a certain way, and that was the way that she felt the last time. So she couldn't view it as a memory, so she thinks she made it up. I would have called her crazy to think that she changed the past or deposited a memory that never happened and that someone else could express it. But when I heard it, I knew it was true. I had spent so much time with my inner child in my memories, where my mental adult self is carrying the younger me and nurturing her like she needed to be nurtured. And that memory no longer carried the same weight, but we healed the past to settle the present, and both parts of me were there for it. I believed it to be entirely true, and I hope that we all take that into consideration as we think about our past and our present and our futures, that we are changing it as we consider it. We offer it a new tone every time we connect mental matter and motion. I've been reading about spiritual bypassing as a defense mechanism. Spiritual bypassing is essentially when you use spiritual explanations to avoid complex issues. So just as a quick overview from a website that, I don't know, first one I Googled when looking up spiritual bypassing, signs of it are avoiding feelings of anger, believing in your own spiritual superiority as a way to hide from insecurities, believing that traumatic events must serve as learning experiences or that there is a silver lining behind every negative experience, believing that spiritual practices such as meditation or prayer are always positive, extremely high, often unattainable idealism, feelings of detachment, focusing only on spirituality and ignoring the present, only focusing on the positive or being overly optimistic, projecting your own negative feelings onto others, pretending that things are fine when they clearly are not. That's hilarious that those two are back to back. Pretending that things are fine when they clearly are not, following projecting your own negative feelings onto others. Who's saying that they clearly are not? Because if you feel that way, like I do this all the time. I tell myself that I'm practicing being a better person when I'm in situations that I don't want to be in. I can be fine when things aren't okay. I'm not pretending. I'm not comfortable, but I'm not going to sit and talk about how things are clearly not okay. I spent a day doing that last week and I'd rather be dead. Moving on. Thinking that people can overcome their problems through positive thinking. Thinking that you must rise above your emotions. Using defense mechanisms as denial and repression. Spiritual bypassing is a superficial way of glossing over problems in a way that might make us feel better in the short term, but ultimately solves nothing and just leaves the problem to linger on. Saying everything is part of God's plan, or everything happens for a reason, or blessing in disguise, good vibes only, love and light. And all of those things sound decent and nice and are probably fine when they're reserved for commenting on Facebook, but not for connecting with another human being right in front of you. Because it doesn't help anybody. It doesn't hurt anybody either, but it's nonsense. Tips and tricks for confronting the urge to spiritually bypass. Avoid labeling emotions as good or bad. While some emotions may be negative or unpleasant, they serve a purpose. Emotional experiences are not wrong or taboo, and feeling these emotions does not make you a bad person. Try viewing your emotions with acceptance and remember that all emotional states are only temporary. Remember that negative thoughts and feelings serve a purpose. The goal of life is not to avoid having such thoughts, it's to use those thoughts to propel positive actions. Simply putting on rose-colored sunglasses and ignoring the problem does not solve it. Remember that uncomfortable feelings are often a sign that something is wrong and something needs to change. If you are always trying to reduce discomfort by simply avoiding it, the situations that are causing you distress will stay the same. Look at these uncomfortable emotions as an opportunity for transformation rather than a burden to avoid. So, with that little window of spiritual bypassing, you may have heard a lot of the things that I think, say, feel, and suggest. Also, a lot of things that I don't. And I think what we need to do is get off each other's backs. I don't think spiritual bypassing needs to be a term in this way. All of this is projection to me. All of this entire thing that I've just read. There are so many different reasons why people have these ideas. I'm a person who will undoubtedly agree that something good can be pulled from every bad situation, even if that is the notion to never do it again. If that's all I learned was that we never have to experience this again. Now we know. At least you learned a boundary. At least you discovered something new, something safe for you. And you know, this is what's frustrating to me about Jesus dying for our sins. I think when his time came and they're like, hey, we're doing it. Your life will be ended, essentially. And all these people who love and adore him are standing around just waiting for it to happen because at this point it's inevitable, right? And they let him. So when he has this notion of like, let me be it. Let me be the last one. Stop doing this to each other. Let me be the last one. And if you can stomach this, it's going to continue. But the point is, you have the capacity to do something else. That's why I get so fussy with perpetuating things that shouldn't be perpetuated, and why we don't hurt people on purpose, and why we do forgive people constantly, and why I want to avoid feelings of anger. I want to focus on the positive. I know that where my brain is attracts. I know that I am full of magnetism. I know that I scale my energy so high when I'm angry, and I feel better compressed. I feel better without high highs and low lows. When I can compress that energy, I can still feel all of that greatness in a smaller window. It doesn't have to be high highs and low lows. I used to think that getting to the root or the core of the issue would save the day. And I've proved to myself that that works with NLP and the reality checks. That episode goes through specifically how your brain interprets that information and how you can turn that into a tool to change your mind quicker, better, faster, and feel better about it. But it does create these ripples. But that's the thing. You want to be able to change your mind. You want to be able to be flexible. You want to be okay to look at the darkness and feel the anger and not burst out into rage. I want to be able to feel my anger and say, thank you for my medicine. The only time I'm angry is when a part of me that needs to be loved can't be seen or heard or is uninformed. And that's why energy is so weird And like lying specifically has been a hard one for me to live with. When you live with somebody who lies to you, it's like there's a notion in their energetic field that says, don't find out, don't find out, don't find out. And that expresses in my energetic field as like, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. It's like this constant fear of finding. And I know how that feels in my body. I know how it feels in my stomach. I know how it feels in my brain. And it makes me not look forward to coming home. And I used to get off of work and race home. I used to work around cool places that I could go eat better food and shop at cool places. And I made enough money to do those things. All I wanted to do was be home. But the harder life got, the more like my general depression sank in and everything. Like I was so out of touch with myself that by the time I was being lied to, it was just pure chaos. And that's why I had to reestablish my sensibilities. I had to get in touch with myself. I had to sit in the mirror and look myself in the eyes, touch my face and tell myself I'm real and to get at it because everything just felt so stuck and empty, perpetuating hurt. And if life is a highway, bypassing is dope. I think I'm here for it, but not in the way that this suggests. Not in the way that says, let's focus on love and light. Not anything that throws this projection nonsense into it. It's not about how anybody else is acting or doing or thinking or how you think that their behavior means that they are thinking. Because I do think that people can overcome their problems through positive thinking. I do think that you can rise above your emotions and that it's healthy for you to do so. I think it's healthy to have an extremely high, often unattainable idealism. I love so much that spiritual bypassing has to offer because life is a highway. And in this metaphor, it's like, you can't go around it. You can't skirt the outside. You got to go through it. But if we're all heading in the same direction, you just programmed in a shortcut. And if we're considering programming as upgrades, why don't we just consider a bypass an upgrade if it changes your operating system? If you're doing all of these things and the spiritual bypassing part is only a problem when it doesn't work in your favor. But it doesn't matter how everybody else sees it. It matters how it feels about you. When you're like, oh, I can buy into those ideals. I can buy into those ideals. I can buy into those ideals. You buy into these ideals that this is how life is. That we all come here with spiritual contracts that we're supposed to fulfill our entire life. We buy into those ideas and spiritual bypass until we figure out what's actually going on. Or, we assume a purpose and move forward with that. Whatever part gets you to do anything else is the part that you need to focus on. The part that gets you to do anything else that feels better, that's the part you need to focus on. And it's not just about getting through it or getting over it. You can do all of those things. You can understand it. When you code your mind in this way, when you understand how stuff enters your system and exits your system and how much we literally share together, if you feel the weight of the world of who you are as a person on your shoulders, know that it is you and your surroundings. And if you are in hefty surroundings, it's interesting that there's a lot of these UFO stories that I hear from people who have been abducted or had contact or whatever it is. And there's a correlation here that their parents or that somebody close to them or in their household is active military. But during these moments, it's like they'll see military folk walking by. And I can't help but wonder if the density from the workplace doesn't just come home, saturate, and because nobody, top secret clearance, you can't tell people what's going on. You can't tell people what you're doing. You can't talk about those relationships. There's certain things at work that you're not going to bring home. But let's say that energy resides in one person in the home and they bring it home and then it floods the house. So then the people in the house transmute the energy. They're the ones that are vocal stimming and talking with their hands, assuming it's safe enough to do these things. And if not, maybe it establishes in these contacts, in these expressions, because I've never had a UFO experience. But I also think that we're just living in one giant holographic projection. We anticipate things because we expect them. We are the creators, but we think we are the observers. This is macro and micro in my heart that we are creating all of this around us. Imagine what we could do by reprogramming, by allowing a bypass. I went to a Reiki healing earlier this year, and when I went, there was a notion that was expressed that's like, hey, I'm getting this feeling like there's a person in your house that like this person was a child in your past life. And I was sitting there thinking like, yeah, felt like that last week. We're both grown-ass adults, but you know how that emotion resides in you when you've dealt with an adult that you don't feel like is acting like an adult. If they're not acting like an adult, they're likely acting like a child. So that energy probably would express to a healer who believes in reincarnate in such a way that that sentence could come out of her mouth. But it's my understanding, and this came from an old boss who was like, I don't know what I must have done in past lives to get this stuff happen to me in my life. It's so crazy. And I'm like, well, what do you mean a past life? Because you're kind of stirring the pot as you're walking along the path here. I'm pretty sure this is all present life. And then between those considerations, I'm like, it's all present life. Anytime something is presented as a past life, it means that it's not happening right now. If it can be conceptualized based on your knowledge of what you already know, it means that it's already happened and you can comprehend it from this point. So it is past. But at that point, I'm like, I'm done paying people to tell me about myself. And that was because I just had too clear of an understanding. I had that sense after the last psychic medium I went to see. However, Reiki healing is different from that. And I knew there was like an unpacking at the end of the Reiki session, but it was apparent to me what was happening, how she was comprehending the energy that I was feeling. But I decided I wasn't going to pay anybody to tell me about myself anymore. But that was a curious thing because it was like, these things still help people in the same way that light language does. And I'm not going to do light language. I'm probably not going to listen to it anymore either. But it was something that I was so into for such a long time. But like I said, I wanted to sit with it. I wanted to see what it felt like. And it's not something that needs to be done forever. But I got to start doing something. So I recently thought about taking this class. There's an Akashic Records class available for $44. This is the first session that is being recorded live, whatever. After this one is recorded, it's going to be on her library, available for $444. This is a major discount on the front end here, and I'm like, I'm interested. But after that passionate realization of I'm not going to spend another dollar for somebody to tell me about myself in this way. Why was I interested in the Akashic Records? One, I think it's interesting. Two, just like light language, just like any of these other modalities, it helps people. It helps people understand. By me going to these people, I understood different things about myself. By me being in one of those roles, I can offer support. I have a different understanding of what's going on. I have a judgment-free perspective. And when my heart and my body and my soul and my experience is safe and open to experience with you, we can share this energetic transmission together. And it's something that I can do that I wish I had when I was younger. So I don't want it for me. I got what I needed out of it. What I'd want it for is for other people. So what I did, I reached out to my social media community, like just Facebook and Instagram, and was like, hey, just a little update and a special offer. My school's shutting down. Here's kind of what's going on and what I've been interested in lately, and here's where it led me. My learning's not done yet. I'm thinking, if you have any interest in this type of guidance, here's my Venmo. Donate any dollar amount towards this class, and I will offer you a session of either Akashic Records, Reiki healing, or tarot card reading. Any dollar amount. So the way I figured, it's like, if I make enough to take the class, I'll be able to offer all three of those. You choose your session, and we can try this out. If I don't raise enough money, I'll still offer you a session, but you can only choose between Reiki or tarot cards. Either way, any dollar amount reserves a spot. And this way, I can continue learning something that will benefit people who care about it. If that can fund my path, then it can fund my path, if that makes sense. If I can afford the class, I can establish a practice. So it's like we build it together because it's for us together later. If you show me you want it, I'll go figure out how to do it, and I'll bring it home to us. If everything's this energetic give and take, I put myself out there of like, this is what I'm interested in. This is how I want to help. This is what I have to offer. Does anybody want to play with me? I expected like a couple people to maybe throw in $1 or $5 or something like that. And the opposite happened where the class got paid for like 5 times over. And after the class was paid in full, I put my phone down because I'm like, I didn't expect that to happen. And then it was this panic of like, are they just doing that to be nice, or are they just doing it to cover my class? Or I don't know what to do. And then I looked down and I got more money coming in and I'm like, oh God, I don't know what's appropriate. I don't know what the right behavior is. This is money we're talking about here. And I already hit my goal. Is it appropriate to keep taking money? So I put my phone down and walked away. And I sat down the next morning and looked at what came in. And I was just like, all right, okay, don't knock abundance. Don't knock it. But there was this feeling inside of me that like, Allison, you only want this to help other people. Why are you letting people fund your way into something just because? My fear here is that the people that were offering it, they were giving me money because they want me to succeed. But what I'm testing here is, can I succeed? Because I have to evaluate interest. I get to take my class, but the class is only relevant with interest. Yeah, what do you do with that? So I acknowledged it. I acknowledged that I was uncomfortable. I acknowledged that I didn't know what to do and that I honestly didn't plan for this. So what I did was made a little video, posted it on Facebook and Instagram, and was like, hey, I reached my goal. Thank you. Love you. Here's what's going on. I'm going to take the class. Able to offer all 3 of these now. If you'd still like to reserve a spot, put this in now and we'll move forward. Nothing new came in. So then I was really questioning it like, yeah, these people are only paying my way because they want to support me. They're not doing it because they want supported. This doesn't work as a business model. I don't want to function on donation. I want to function on cooperation. But how can I be mad at abundance? So I moved forward with that whole process of trying to figure out what's what, who's what, get these things scheduled, put in an option at least. So that way, when I send out the form to everybody, it's like, okay, pick your session. There's also a line here with pick your session, which is a required part of the form. And it's just like Akashic Records, Tarot card, Reiki healing. No thanks. I just wanted to donate. And that way there's still an opt-out, and hopefully everybody that participated does this with me. And I'm excited to see the feedback now because I'm like, now I'll get an idea of what it is, of what people are here for. And the people who reached out, I'm not going to be mad that people want me to succeed, but I'm also not going to continually ask for donations to fund my lifestyle. That's not what I'm going for here. I didn't anticipate to reach my goal. I had a backup plan for if I failed, not if I succeeded. So with that abundance, I was like, all right, it's back in the business. We're going to funnel it back into it and figure out how to make this work. When I say back into the business, I don't have a company. I don't have a business. I have this podcast and I have some skills. I am trying hard to figure out how to get everything I want, to be able to do this, to be able to do that, to do it all with y'all and maintain financial stability. So we're figuring it out, but I took the class. I loved it. I got so much out of it. And I honestly already resonated with a lot of the stuff that was like presented and being taught. I've sat with these ideas for a long time. And the stuff that I was like encouraged to buy into, I either already bought into it or had a very, very comfortable understanding of what conceptually was being presented. And I can say, I see how you see it that way, but here's how it expresses for me. And that's the whole point of the Akashic Records, to me, is taking in that energy and being like, okay, same but different, same but different, same but different. And going through that process made me realize that that's what I've been doing my entire life. And she even said, like, you've probably been doing this. You've been accessing this information. You explore this information regularly. Like when I talk about getting new ideas, when I'm at the imagination station and I'm really relaxed and playing around in my brain and coming up with cool ideas, and I'm not the one orchestrating the event. So like whatever thoughts are going on in my head that are kind of like movies that are playing themselves, that express to me as new ideas, that's accessing the Akashic field. That is taking an outside information, outside energy, surrounding energy, and being allowed to express through my perspective. This is for my entertainment and my imagination. I was telling a story today in high school when we would sit around in the band office and just chit chat with each other in between classes or whatever. And somebody was talking about like dirty jobs kind of thing. And I mentioned like truck drivers were kind of nasty because that's the exposure that I personally had with truck drivers, is that the ones that I knew didn't really care for their personal hygiene very much and didn't care for their truck very much and didn't have like respect in that way. So when I was expressing it, I was like, oh yeah, I know that. And somebody sitting next to me was just like, my dad's a truck driver. And there's about 80 other jobs I could have said. And there's so many different collectives that I could have hit on. But when she said that, I was like, Allison, stop talking, because it seems like everything you say is just the wrong thing to say. Whatever it is about you, whatever it is, like your jokes aren't meaner than other people's jokes. Why is nobody laughing at yours? Are you not funny or do you not get it? Are you autistic or are you Akashic? Because that's what I'm thinking is going on here, is that when something that I express is so clashing in our present, I think it's revealing more than anything. It's not about striking. It's not the shock and awe, the same thing about bumping an elbow. But it's an observation at its purest form where I attack the root of something that I didn't know existed. It's like that notion of don't find out, and I'm knocking on the door like we've got a warrant. But this is an energetic communication. This isn't anything that happens in real life, but it's that emotional feeling of why do I always feel like I say the wrong thing? And it's because the people around me are hurting. The people around me are hiding. This isn't just in my personal space. This isn't just the people that I spend time with. But when I'm really with those people that I get to be strong and safe with, that I get to express freely and curious with, that I get to share fun and excitement with, when we're together, we cultivate the crap out of our auric energy, out of our space together. That like it happened to me today, literally, where, you know, we're talking about different ways to eat food and how we used to scarf it down or whatever, just because of time frame or availability with this and that. But growing up, I was a slow eater. Now, again, I'm a slow eater sometimes and I'm a fast eater other times. If I have a small window of time to eat and I'm starving, I can eat in no time and not think twice about it. But if I'm sitting down having lunch with a friend, it's going to take a lot longer for me to eat my meal because we're chit-chatting. And then by the time I'm about halfway through my meal, I've talked and stopped and paused and stopped to consider their point of view while they're talking. My food has settled in my stomach, which is only the size of like my fist. It doesn't take much. We don't need as much intake. So that was a conversation that we had. And then somebody later was like, we don't even need this much food to begin with anyway. And you know, you can't help but just look at each other like, yeah, yep. We saturate our field. The more you do that and the more you present it, the more you embrace it and walk in it, talk in it, it's surrounding you. You're bathing in it. The people that are around you are splashed in it. But having taken that class just reinforced this idea that the Akasha is a resonance. It's an emotional experience. It's an energetic exchange. And when I say it's an emotional experience, first of all, it isn't emotional in the way that it's like, I'm glad, I'm mad, I'm hurt, I'm happy. It's more like I get to do emotional storytelling while somebody gets to process the emotions. Like I pull it through my filter without judgment, and it gets to express without judgment. It's a sample of clarity, and it doesn't make it right. It just means it resonates in this way. But you'll never hear me say that a dark entity is attached to you. You'll never hear me say that there's an energy vampire. You'll never hear me say that you're cursed. You'll never hear me say that you can't make it out. You'll never hear me say that you're stuck. There's always a way out. And if you have to bypass in the meantime, just to get by until you're stable, whatever, even if you know you're lying to yourself for a little bit, there are some things that are going to feel very true to you in this moment that may not feel true to you in 4 hours, that may feel true to you for the next 10 months straight, that may not feel true to you later. You don't need rigid consistency, but notice the operating system, deposit new information, mess with your algorithm, be mindful of what is happening. Because for me, when I am in this space with another person that I can step aside for, and the way that that works is like I can hear your crummiest story and I won't judge you on it. I'll feel through it with you. but I can't work with nothing. It's like you have to offer me something on the front end. You have to give me a sample. Otherwise, I don't know what's going on. And I've worked really hard on doing that on purpose without having any idea what the Akashic records are. You don't have to go through downtown traffic every single day. Give yourself permission to bypass. Give yourself permission to try new things. And sometimes when you try new things, you might learn that you've been doing this all your life and now you're just able to cultivate it a little bit better. But don't be afraid to get back into it. Don't be afraid to get back into the mix, and don't be afraid to go back downtown, because it's that part in the mix with everybody in the hustle and bustle that a lot of really cool stuff happens. Your path is not your route, so feel free to bypass when you need to, but stay on mission. Keep your destination in mind. Thanks for listening to another episode of Unravel with Allison. We've got all the social networks up and running. Feel free to reach out, follow, subscribe, keep in touch, and stay up to date on new episodes. Thank you for being here, and I will catch you next week.